It's always a delight to listen to our rabbi. Today we heard him speak from the year 5777. We're now in 57. We're going into 5785. You know, it's incredible to me that 5 years after, we're in the fifth year after he is gone, and we're still here. Baruch Hashem. God is great. He has kept us going, and I'm so grateful. You know, he spoke about taking a balance, like at the end of every business. At the end of September, believe it or not, is our year end at Kehilat Shear Yashuv. And I get in touch with our accountant, and I make sure that he prepares our taxes, and we look to see how we are. We have losses? Do we have profit? Although we're a nonprofit organization, and we can't have too much gain, but we need to break even. But in our lives, we need to look back over the year and say, okay, am I better this year than I was last year? How am I doing in all the areas of my life? And those around us help us to do that, which is wonderful. And when we see that we've done something better, we can give God thanks, and it sends these shocks of joy through our system. And that's so much healthier than the stress that we bring upon ourselves. As much as stress does harm, thanksgiving and joy does good for us, does good for our bodies and our souls. And he spoke about many things in this parasha, which I'll send out to everybody, the written version. One of the important things for us to remember is that tradition, because we do keep some traditions in this community. We are part of the Jewish community, but it's very difficult to choose which traditions we keep, the same as which traditions do we keep at home, because traditions are good as long as they bring us closer to our God. Yeshua fought with his brothers. Yeshua fought with the Pharisees over that, saying that you travel miles to make one disciple, one proselyte, and you put on heavier burdens on them than even you're willing to carry. So if a tradition becomes a burden and it takes us away from God, which sadly is happening in our Holy Land, in the Promised Land, the ultra-Orthodox have become so religious and have laid so many heavy burdens on our people that they're running away from God. And that ends up, they run to all other gods. And God is always warning us, don't run to the other gods. Follow me. Rabbi spoke about Adam and Eve, how they had one rule, and that rule was given to Adam. Adam, the male, is the protector. When I look at what is happening to the male today, how the females have gone so far to the extreme that we don't need men anymore. And this is wrong. We need to come back into balance. God is talking about that in these portions. And I love that he gave us free will. We have a choice on how we are to live. Do we choose life, which brings prosperity, and not necessarily wealth, but prosperity, meaning, like it says, he said in Pirkei Avot, who is rich? The one who is happy with what he has. When we can walk around the place where we live, or even where we work, and say, I am happy with what I have, we are indeed rich in our hearts. Or we can choose death. And when we choose to go against the boundaries, these principles that God gave us in the Ten Commandments, that's when we're choosing death. So it's time that we look back on our life. What areas have I improved? Where have I chosen life and not death? How have I been with my neighbor? This coming Wednesday night, we begin to celebrate the Yom HaTeruah, which our rabbis called Rosh Hashanah. And we need to be really searching our hearts and saying, God, please help me. And the amazing thing is, he always does. The answers come from somewhere, out of the blue. We don't know, but they come. So does anybody have something that spoke to their hearts from what we heard today?
Okay, I'll put myself.
Thank you.
Uh,
There you are.
There I am. One of the things that I found really, I love the way Rabbi tied all the scriptures together, starting from Adam and Eve, and how he talked about when the snake told Eve, whether it's a real snake or not, it doesn't matter. But the principle that she was told that she believed, the snake said, nothing will happen if you eat if you disobey and you eat of that tree, whatever, nothing will happen. And just as in this portion in Deuteronomy, Devarim, those who said, I could do what I want, nothing's going to happen. It's just a theme that goes throughout the whole scriptures, all of the whole Torah, and it happens in our lives too. Like, so what if I do this? Is it really that terrible if I do whatever it is? And I find the more we do things like that, the more there's no peace in our hearts at all. So it's not like God is saying, watch this step and watch that step. It's not that kind of thing. It's principles of how to live a full, rich, and kind, and all these things, life. And sometimes, we feel the consequences. And even if we don't think we believe in God, we could think we don't believe in God, but we know when we're not nice to somebody or whatever, we do things wrong, we don't feel right. And that's because it's disobedience to God. So that's how we suffer the consequences of our actions. God, we pull ourselves away from God, even if we don't realize we're doing it. Anyway, yeah.
And he even said, one of the things that she said too, is God said, we're not to eat it. We're not even to touch it. And she added to what God said, because he never said you shouldn't touch it. She wasn't even there, as he said, he told Adam. But when we add to his words and put our own words into his mouth, that's like adding all these extra traditions that bring us away from God.
Right.
He never said it. And it may seem like it's unimportant, but everything that God wrote is important and for us to really to examine. Anybody else have something to add?
Let me see what I wrote.
Well, I would like to add something. Hi, Brian. And this is about in this portion, I believe that God is telling us that we need to attend His voice, His way of life, because as Rabbi Shaul said, the problem is when you put a lot of rules, additional rules, and then you will get I don't know what is the word, anxiety,
Anxiety.
anxiety, because you start to say, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, and now your focus is more on the procedure, more on of that goal of what you're doing. Okay, so in this portion is very clear. It's talking about Hayon, which Rabbi said, right? Today, tomorrow will be today, 3 weeks more will be today. So it's a present continuous. Then it says in this portion, okay, the Torah is not so difficult, so you can go to the heaven and bring down the Torah to this earth, or go into the deep of the sea in order to find the way. For today is very difficult to go in both sides. Okay, imagine at that time. Okay, so but the point is that that is not about rules. It's not about following different opinions, criteria from people. It's about to follow the principles in the Ten Commandments. It's that is enough. And also here in this portion is the verse. Yeah, is a verse that for me is my favorite of all the Torah. Is in the Barim 29-28, when it says that all the secret things belongs to the eternal, our God,
Yes.
but the revealed ones belong to us
Yes.
and to our sons forever, that we can put in work all these words of this Torah. Okay,
Yes.
and I love this because, you know, after the death of my dad, you know, I've been, you know, sometimes I start to think too much, okay, about life, death, and things like that. But the point is that when I read today this portion, it only came to my mind, hey, don't worry, do what you know. The secret things are from God. For example, life after death. That is not a revealed things for us
Right.
yet.
Everybody wants to know it, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and everybody start to live in another life, and the problem is that you are Hayom, you are today here.
Exactly.
Okay, so and also we want to know, for example, about secret things of God. For example, different things that He has done.
Well, we
One
love
of
to
that,
delve. We love to delve into
yeah,
the mystical, the things that,
yeah,
you know, so many people are into Kabbalah. Not that it's bad, but if we spend so much time there with all the mysteries of the universe and not in the simple things that he gave us, that's the problem. Can I interrupt just one moment? Richard
yeah.
had his hand on for a little bit. Yes, Richard, did you want to add something?
Yeah. So some people are comfortable with a lot of rules. So I can kind of empathize with them in a way, or sympathize. I'm in other spheres besides Torah. Here's an example. I was trained in auditing, financial auditing at one time.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I passed the exams and all that stuff. And in auditing, there is a tension between having rules and having principles. Okay, I mean, it isn't just, it's a tension. Driving, for example, we could say I have a principle of driving safely to facilitate the flow of traffic and not injure myself or others. I can have that principle, but I still need stop signs, and I still need rules that other people have imposed that may know better than me.
Can I interrupt, Richard? Only because
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I understand it. But understand also what Moshe is saying and what Rabbi Yeshua was saying. If our rabbis or our sages impose restrictions and rules, and what happens is it's not usually just for them to live within the principles. They impose it on many, many people. And if you don't follow their rules, you're out. And God is not saying that. It's like I remember with my aunt at Pesach time, she would go absolutely nuts because she had to take out all the dishes, put them away, bring out the Pesach dishes, clean out the entire kitchen, make sure, to examine everywhere that there was not one little bit of leaven in the house. She
With a
would
feather, right?
Pardon?
With a feather, cleaning with a feather.
Taking with the feather, burning the chametz. It was really, really, she was exhausted. It was like, and yet what does Pesach say? What does Moshe say? At Pesach, just don't eat leaven. The principle behind that is about, we have to examine what does leaven represent. It's being puffed up. It's being proud like Pharaoh. Pharaoh's arrogance brought complete destruction, not only to his country, but to himself, to his family, and to all the families of Egypt. So it has there's a different understanding there. When God gives us a principle, it's to protect us. When our sages or religious people make a rule, is it to protect us? Is it to, and some of them think that it is it, and they impose it on everybody and judge you if you don't do it. If you don't, you don't eat kosher enough for me. You got to be this high level of glatt kosher or mahedrin kosher. God is not asking us for that. Those are the things we're talking about here, Richard.
Yeah, just so I want to add quickly before I forget. Also, the rules and stuff that Rabbi Shaul and what we're talking about, for example, have nothing to do with things like your stop sign analogy is, with all due respect, it's not a proper analogy in the sense that a stop sign has to do with safety. It has nothing to do with imposing a rule that's a burden. It's to keep order in the world. So I don't believe that this has to do with things like this, like when a building says, watch your step or go to the right because there's a cliff on the left, whatever. These are rules that have nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's religiosity. It's rules that could often lead to self-righteousness. Not everyone who keeps the rules becomes self-righteous, but some people mistake the rules for the actual relationship with God. Like if somebody says, I've met people who say, I keep all the rules, I do this, I do that, but really they don't have a relationship with God, because then I talk about God and he's, well, he's far away, or I don't know if he's there, blah, blah, blah. So it's really to show us that a relationship with God is key. And not that there are beautiful things that we do follow that add to our belief in the Torah, our walk with God. But I don't believe these things are what that means. It means don't make it a burden to get closer to God.
Right.
By saying if you don't take 2 steps sideways, you can't approach God. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's my thought on this.
Yeah, for example, another thing is I sometimes I believe that if I will be an Orthodox Jew, I couldn't work. Honestly, I couldn't provide to my home food. I couldn't provide a relationship with my kids, because in some Orthodox roots, branches, these guys are always studying, living at the yeshiva, and making prayers, and that is good. But there is no balance, like the Rabbi said. Okay, so the point here is, as Moshe mentioned, Rabbi mentioned, the Torah is for life, to bring life. Okay, so if that is not happening, then there is an issue. And to put that same example, for example, this kind of thing is, okay, you have rules in the transit laws, okay? You have to respect the red, the green, yellow lines and different signs. But another thing is like to say, okay, when you start to drive, please put 45 degrees or put 90 degrees every time your seat, for example.
Right.
Then measure between the
Steering
how do you say
wheel.
that? Yeah, steering wheel and yeah, and your seat, that is X quantity of centimeters, for example. And no matter if you are bigger or you are short, you have to measure, be sure about that.
Right.
Okay. And things like that that not make sense, that not helps you really to drive safely.
Right.
Okay. That is the problem also with the Torah. In the Torah, there are so many things that are gray. Because, for example, God say, just an example, okay, please bring me an ark. But how is the art of the ark? It doesn't say, okay. Just says you have to do it with gold inside, and wood and gold and things like that. Gives you something, and a
A structure.
structure, but doesn't talk about details.
Right.
Okay. So then somebody's in some part of the world start to say, oh, that it must be like this. And then came another person, another sage that says, oh no, this is the one. So at the end, you can see a picture, 3, 4, 5 different ideas of how was the ark, for example. Which one is today important for us, that to say, oh, this is the one that is true? Well, God didn't want that we worship an ark. Okay.
Right.
He
Exactly.
wanted to show us the principle of that ark.
Right.
Go outside, go inside, and there is
Wood in between.
wood. The wood is us.
Right.
We are very fragile. Okay.
Right.
Go outside because we have to be like, oh, we
Shining.
are representing gods in the
Right.
world.
Shining.
Okay, we need to shining to the world, but it's not also good to shine outside. We need to shine inside. Okay,
From within.
that is why from within.
Yeah.
So because there are a lot of people that shines outside, but inside they have different kind of thoughts and feelings,
Right.
and
Right.
so also shine inside.
Right.
So that is a principle, but it's not so important to know, oh, this is the right drawing of the ark, or this one is. That is, God didn't want to add that in the in the Torah,
Right.
but he only showed us the principle and let the man decide how to build that ark. For
Yeah. 'Cause
example,
he
in that
gave him.
case is Bezalel,
He gave him the
right?
skills. He gave him that's right. There's freedom to do it. Yes, Richard, you have your hand up again.
Yes. Okay. So I respect most religions because I have been influenced by 20th century thinkers who started to notice commonalities in religion. And one bundle of commonalities is how sacredness shows up. All right? So maybe those, call them behaviors of people, religious people who seem buried in rules and rituals seem as an encumbrance to some people like us. To them, it may show up as sacred. Okay, now, having said that, also, I've attended some services where my late father attended Chabad house, okay? And I heard the rabbi talk about certain rules that you just don't hear about in regular places. Like, for example, we might know about the rule against Lashon Hara. Let's call it evil gossiping. So let's call it defaming someone's character behind on that person's back. But some of our sages have added to that by saying, you have to be careful about how you compliment someone too, because if you say, for example, you look good now, then that may be a way of putting them down to say that they didn't look good before. So I'm just saying that there is some good that comes out of being concerned with rules too. So I will now mute myself.
But we're
Could
not
I
saying,
just, oh,
go ahead, Miriam.
okay. I was just going to say, Richard, I think I understand what you're saying, and I agree with the principle of what you're saying, but I'm wondering if you're understanding fully what I mean or what we mean, in the sense that what you're saying is true, but what the example you just gave now, I see the point. It's expanding on a principle, and I use the word expanding. The rule is still don't commit lashon hara, which is like evil gossip, and that's true. Don't bear false witness, whatever. All of that is true, and I agree with that. But it's not the same as if you were to say, you could not use this word. You could not ever use the word in reference to another person is, let's say, bad. And it becomes legalistic, and the person can never say that, and they lose the sense of the principle, which I agree with what you said. They lose that sense of the principle, and instead they start to think, did I say that word by mistake? I forget if I said that word or not, and they get caught up in that. So I think maybe I agree with you, and you don't realize you're agreeing with us. We're not saying not to elaborate on certain things to clarify, like what you're talking about just now, what the rabbi said. That's just clarification. We're talking about certain things that are added that become rules. It's not an elaborate. When we talk everywhere, we're elaborating. We're trying to make the Torah understood by discussing it. And if I may, that's why it seems to me I agree with what you're saying. But what you're saying now wasn't an example of another rule. That rabbi was elaborating on a principle of lashon hara. That wasn't another rule.
Which
He
is
didn't
what,
say,
which is
never say don't the word, say this word.
all those things that we read in the Torah are elaborations of or applications of the 10. Our rabbi used to say, may he rest in peace, say yes to relationships, say yes to God, and say no to religion. And what he meant by that was that religions are man-made rules and regulations that put man's wisdom above God's. That's what we're saying. When a person converts from one religion to the other, they're making what's called a lateral move. But when they want a relationship with God, that's very different. Yes, Richard.
Not everybody is wired to have relationships with God. Okay? And
I disagree. I believe everyone is wired. They're just choosing not to, or God hasn't revealed himself in that way yet. There are circumstances that may have happened in their lives, and they just are angry with God. A relationship is a commitment. A relationship is a desire to get to really know the other person, and that knowing that the other person knows and has our best interest at heart. Something has happened. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, well, just so you know, the word Pharisee hasn't given an awful connotation in the modern age. Okay, and many historians have looked back and noted that that kind of Lashon Hara, in a way, was overstated. Okay, so you have these people who didn't kill that many people, who were approximately 1.5 million in population, and they get this onus on them forever, practically, because they went through a period after they came back from exile where they may have felt that they need to protect things, and they were occupied by the Romans. They may have thought that they needed to be that way, to inform. Plus, I just like to say, religion may be man-made, but it's also a human condition thing. Okay, we can't run away from being religious in some ways. Okay, and that's something that also some thinkers of the 20th century started to make a claim for, which I agree with. Okay, I will listen to your responses on the replay. I have to go now. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom to you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm just going to say, even though he's not here now, I think somehow he's mixing up, like ritual is good, and we do need form, and to have a service is good. And maybe God didn't say you have to have a service. He didn't say, so I'm saying, but we're allowed to do that. And I agree with him that we need ritual. But again, I think he's confusing these things. We're not saying don't have ritual, don't have form. And I have a feeling, because he keeps coming up with this, and his examples are not what we're saying. His examples are elaboration, form. These are good things. So that I just want to add that.
But not only that, the Pharisee is just a title. The Nicodemus was a Pharisee.
He was good.
And he, he followed Yeshua's teachings. He loved the Torah. Not everybody who was a Pharisee was corrupt. So yeah,
And also, I don't know what he said about we're misunderstanding or misusing the word Pharisee, whatever. As you say, Shaul was studied with the Pharisees.
Exactly.
So anyway, just to add that.
Yeah. And Yeshua spoke to the Pharisees all the time. He didn't argue with all of them, but he was challenging them to really take a look at what they were doing. As we challenge each other, we challenge our own people. Mauricio, I think you were going to say something else.
Yeah, would be interesting, but probably not to share on internet, but because that could be misunderstood. But there are many opinions that are against the Torah for some rabbis that are today used for anti-Semitism. Okay, probably they are out from context, but for example, there are some rabbis that says, oh, that thing is good, but it's against the Torah, a principle of the Torah. And he could be a very wise rabbi, but I'm sorry, if the principle is against the Torah, I cannot be agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that all these people is taking those kind of words to use against the old Jews, okay? Because it's like, oh, one rabbi is saying something that is not good, doesn't mean that all the Jews think the very same way. Okay. In for example, things like how to treat captives girls, for example, the kind of things, or how we treat, for example, women that are not Jewish. Okay. And you know what I'm referring to. So that is approved for some, and that is what we are saying. No, that is not good. Okay, that is why it's so important that in this portion is very clear to say, okay, fear God, effort yourself, but it's very important that in this portion say, and learn Torah, because that is the main point. And if you learn Torah, you need to study Torah. Okay, so that is so important that can come to ourselves the binah, the knowledge from God. And how do we know that? By hearing. And we hear because a relationship with God is not about, oh, God is appearing in front of me like, Charles Heston movie of the Ten Commandments that, oh, the sky opens and talks, we hear the voice of God. No, it's about that when sometimes God talks to us, to our inner part, okay, to our conscience, okay. And yes, we don't hear with our this kind of eyes. We cannot see God with our own eyes.
Yeah.
We can see how he moves, how he God talks about to us through a person.
Right.
Okay. So and that is so important to have a relationship with him.
Right.
Okay. So that is it's something that I would like to add, because it's not we are judging people. It's not about that. Okay. It's about that when we know the Torah and we follow the principles, we can have the capacity to say, oh, this is good, this is not good. And how do we know? Because we follow and learn Torah.
There's one thing I can be grateful for in all the types of spirituality that I've been involved in, including Christianity, is the understanding that we can have a relationship with a divine being. And Orthodox Judaism lost that for a while. But now modern Orthodoxy, the Chabad, they're all coming back to that understanding that we have a relationship with the Creator, because there are many Jews who always say, oh, God is up there and he created us, but he's too busy now. We mustn't bother him with our everyday things. He's there. We can do what we want and, live our own way. God doesn't bother with us. Forget it. But we have, when a relationship is as a two-way relationship, and we know from things that happen in our lives that God let that happen. God, we don't believe in chance or in luck. We believe that this is God working in our lives. Sometimes he gives us a discipline. Sometimes he tests us and tries us just to see how much our heart is willing to follow him. So I'd like to just talk to us on a personal level, but I want to stop the recording here and say Shabbat Shalom to everybody, but we can stay on because I'd like to have a bit of a chat with everyone. So I say Shabbat Shalom, and I want to wish
Shabbat
everybody
Shalom.
Lashana Tova, and we'll see you on Thursday for those of us who want to be in the service with us. So again, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Unmute.